Okay, good morning, everybody. 11 o'clock on a beautiful Sunday morning. And we're joined today with Steve Waddingham from Aston Martin, that you probably all know of if you haven't met, otherwise affectionately known as Wadders. And James Muirhead from Bridge of Weir Leather, who supply the beautiful leather for the interiors of your Aston Martins. So I'm not going to waffle now, just a little bit of housekeeping. If everybody could please remain on mute throughout the meeting, and you'll see from the bottom of your screen, one of the icons says chat. It's like a speech bubble. If you have any questions, please do feel free to pop your questions in there, and Steve will take some at the end. Okay, over to you, Steve.
Yeah, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. I think it's morning for everybody that's tuned in. Apologies if anybody's in a different time zone, but lovely to see you all, and a big warm welcome to James. Really, morning, James.
Good morning, everyone.
Good to see you. So James and I have known each other for a while now. The relationship between Bridge of Weir and Aston Martin Legrand is a very close one, and as I was reminded earlier, James and I did a little bit of a world tour a few years back, and we were part of a training program which went to Europe, America, and the Middle East, and we went out to basically kind of train and motivate the local dealers, and we did a series of different classroom presentations. My one was the company history, and James did one all about the leather, and actually that was probably the most popular of all the different subjects that we did, because it's a subject that a lot of car salespeople wouldn't know a great deal about in any detail. So it was a really popular thing. Hopefully we'll do it again at some point, and hopefully the knowledge that we imparted rubbed off on some of the staff. So James, I think you're going to take us through a little bit about the sort of background of Bridge of Weir to start with, and then we've got some sort of questions that we thought we'd run through, and then we'll take some more from the audience as well, if that's all right.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that wasn't me that was sharing my screen there, by the way. But yeah, absolutely lovely to meet you all, everyone. My name's James Muirhead. I work for Bridge of Weir Leather Company. I'm just going to take you through a quick presentation. My apologies if I speak quite quickly. That's just the Scottishness in me, but please, if you've got any questions at the end, please ask away. Please bear with me while I just put this onto the screen. Hopefully you can all see that.
Yep.
You got it? We're just going to go
yes.
from beginning. Okay. So here we go. My name's James Muirhead, as I just mentioned there. I am 7th generation leather maker, and I can our family can trace our leather manufacturing roots all the way back to 1758. Bridge of Weir itself was established in 1905, and we first got into the automotive industry with supplying the Ford Model T. My great-grandfather, Arthur Muirhead, actually jumped on a boat over to Detroit and met with Henry Ford, and over a couple of sherries or whatever it may have been, they made a deal where Henry Ford would fly over the Scottish Hides to furnish the interior of his cars. Since then, we've grown from strength to strength in the automotive industry, with some really exciting projects in between, which I'll touch upon in the presentation. Just to give you all a bit of peace of mind, we absolutely do not believe in harming any animal for the production of leather, and we do not harm any animal for the production of leather. We very much are a co-product, a byproduct from the meat industry. So as there's a demand for meat, we take those hides that would go to landfill if they didn't come to us, and we add beauty to them, and we turn them into something absolutely stunning that goes to furnish the inside of beautiful cars like Aston Martin. For us, it's very important for us to source locally, so we can have complete control over animal welfare. We work very closely with the farmers to ensure that the cattle get the best feed, they get the best grass, they get freedom to roam, they get kept inside during the winter months, and really, very much like human beings that the healthier the diet, the better your skin. And it's the same that applies to the cattle. We're very fortunate that we live in such a great, strong climatic region where we have amazing rainwater very much every single day up in Scotland, which about 70% of our hides come from. The rest come from England, Wales and Ireland and Northern Ireland. But yeah, very much the healthier the cattle, the better the hides, and therefore that pays off dividends when it comes to manufacturing the leather and inside Aston Martin. Moving on slightly. Design is such an important thing in our industry. As you know, the interiors of Aston Martins have changed over the years, but today they're so intricate, they're so detailed, from duotone perforated seats to embroidery. The amount of attention to detail that goes into these things is huge, and we're a big part of that project. For instance, when we just get a hint of a new car coming to market, which is probably about in 5 years' time, it will actually hit the dealerships. It probably takes about 5 to 6 years of us working with the designers at Aston Martin, researching what the colours will be, what the threads will be, what the perforation holes will look like, what size they'll be. Things like even when you're designing perforations, you need to take into consideration airflow testing, like how the heated seats, the climatic seats will work. So much will go into an interior design of your car. It's more than you probably expect. And yes, the models that you drive will have been 5-6 years in the making, working with the various suppliers, leather suppliers, and the internal designers at Aston Martin. So manufacturing and sustainability is huge for us. It's why we've been able to remain in situ in lovely rainy Scotland. Sorry, a wee bit of a cold today. Basically, when we receive a raw hide from the abattoir, it weighs between 40 and 45 kilos in weight, and a finished hide weighs between 3.5 to 4 kilos. So about 90% of what of that hide historically used to go to waste. So we wanted to change that, and we wanted to be able to turn that solid waste back into power, which we did. So when we removed the hair, we put it through something called our thermal energy plant. The hair, any unwanted proteins, and we can actually render that down and turn that into a steam. That steam then in turn heats the water from our very own loch that we have at the back of the factory, and that same steam generates heat that we can then use to dry the leather later on in the process. The fat that we can remove from the B side of the hide as well, we can turn that and render that down into a biodiesel. So not only can we create our own gas, but we can also create our own biodiesel as well. So we're well on track to be carbon neutral by 2023. And we're going to be hopefully going to be producing enough energy that we can give back into the local grid by 2025. This is a great story for us. It's a great synergy with Aston Martin. Aston Martin are constantly looking for more sustainable, more responsible suppliers. And we're very much at the forefront of the industry, leading the leather industry in terms of sustainable manufacturing. So it's something that we're really, really proud of. So for some of our customer base today, as you can see, although we have been involved in quite a lot of non-automotive projects, you can see today that we're not the largest leather manufacturer in the world. In fact, we're probably quite small compared to some of our competitors in terms of what we manufacture in a week. They could probably get through in half a day, but we like it that way. We don't want to be the largest manufacturer in the world. We want to make sure that we turn our attention to quality and delivering a very premium, sustainable product. And as you can see from our customer base, that we're very much doing so. So some of the iconic projects that we supplied over the years. So as I mentioned, that Bridge of Weir was established in 1905. And so you can imagine since then, there've been a lot of products out there, a lot of projects out there that have required leather on their seating, whether it be furniture, aviation or marine. So one of the most iconic we had was the QE2, which is great, followed by the Orient Express, followed by the Charles Eames chair, which all of you will be very familiar with. We did supply Gucci for a period of time as well. The DeLorean, very iconic car. I think we were probably one of the only suppliers that ever got paid for that before it went bust. Concorde, which is fantastic. Never seen a leather seat go at the speed of sound. the House of Parliament. Oh, and one of the most recent bespoke projects that we worked on was a Macallan whiskey, which is a £65,000 bottle of whiskey, which is fantastic. And Bridge and Weir supplied the red leather for the interior of the box. So I hope that's given you oh no, sorry, and I'm going to run through as well some of the iconic Aston Martins that we supplied over the years. So as I mentioned before, we've had such a great relationship with Aston Martin. We actually started being their sole supplier in 2002 when Connolly sadly went under. Although we're very friendly with Connolly today, Jonathan Connolly is a good friend of ours, and although he's not in the volume automotive side of the business, he does still do some bits and pieces now and again. But yeah, it was a shame what happened to Connolly Leather. But where one supplier sort of sadly fell down, it did give us an opportunity to step in and take over as Aston Martin's sole supplier, which is fantastic news for us. And just to run through since 2002, some of the iconic Aston Martins that we chose that were really special to work on. One quite controversial one was the Signet. Believe it or not, it had the same amount of leather in the Signet that it did in the DB9. So it was, although it may have not been a great success in terms of an Aston Martin vehicle, it had lots of leather in it. And for us, that makes it a success for a Bridge and Weir leather supplier anyway. So that's me kind of rabbited on long enough. I'll pass you back over to Steve, where I believe we're going to have some questions.
Thanks, James. Yeah, it's funny that the 2002 thing, I vividly remember that because at that point I was heavily involved with the Vanquish at Newport Pagnell. That was my sort of day-to-day sort of baby. I was based there doing the factory tours, yeah, and also popping over to Bloxham to do DB7. And you know, just for everybody else's benefit, really, if you can imagine, when you're building a car, you've probably got sort of 3,000 components in a car, and some of them are fairly significant. So leather, obviously, for an Aston Martin is a fairly hefty chunk of the car, really. So you're barreling along making cars. And 2002, we had a really good order bank for Vanquish, and we were ploughing through that order bank trying to build more cars than we'd originally planned to build a week to sort of get through it. And then suddenly our biggest supplier, Connolly, kind of falls over. And it was a real sort of mad panic sort of set through the place, as you can imagine. And then you guys came along and just literally picked it up. And I'll never forget it. You just picked the whole lot up, all the colours that we had, all the special colours, everything that was on order. Overnight, you guys matched the colours, because we were worried that we'd be picking up the phone, you know, individually to every owner, trying to explain that we can't get that blue anymore, it has to be a different blue. And it would have been a nightmare to have done that. So I'll always remember that, and I think the company will as well. I think it's very grateful for what you did back then. And yeah, it's been an amazing journey ever since, isn't it, really, when you think of the volume of cars that have been built since 2002. It's a fairly large chunk of probably about 80,000 cars, I would think, and probably more.
Yeah,
over 80,000 so far. That's a lot of leather, isn't it, really?
Yeah, no,
a lot of beef burgers.
Yeah, a lot of beef burgers getting consumed there. But no, absolutely, and that's the joy of working with Aston Martin, is the fact that they truly do see the value of leather within the car. For us, it's really nice the fact that they offer such premium leathers as well. Nowadays, you do get quite a lot of generic leathers that have heavy embosses that try to mask quite a lot of the natural characteristics that you find within leather. Leather for me, when you sit in a really nice leather seat, you want to know it is leather. So often now that I might be out in a restaurant or a bar somewhere, and you're sitting on a seat, and it's very difficult to tell between a vinyl and a leather, whereas you don't have that problem in Aston Martin. Not only do you get the smell, but because they're such a big fan of these natural grain leathers, even if two customers order a black interior for their car and it's exactly the same leather spec, their seats will be unique to that Aston Martin owner, because each hide has its own fingerprint, its own degree of variability. And so you will get that natural characteristics through a hide. You will have a very small light heeled scar, maybe on a bolster or on a seat insert. And for me, that's the sign of true beauty, the sign of true leather, and a testament to Aston Martin for promoting that as well.
Yeah, and there's a couple of questions there that I'm sure lots of people are thinking the same thing. So the first one I'll ask for everybody's benefit is, where does the smell come from? Because as you say, most people associate, one of the things that they associate with leather is the smell of it as well as the feel of it. So where does that come from, James?
Very good question. So believe it or not, what we use to soften leathers in the dye retan process and what we call the wet end process is actually marine oils. So it's a byproduct from the fish industry. So believe it or not, that's quite a pungent smell that goes into the leather. Thankfully, the end leather doesn't smell of fish. Otherwise, I don't think we would have much business. But yeah, it's actually the marine oils that go into it. That, along with many other things in terms of the process, but in terms of the main contributor, I would say, is the marine oils that we use.
Yeah, and I think, to be fair, I should also add in that when you get a brand new Aston Martin, the other thing you can smell, and you won't be aware that you're smelling it, but mixed in with the leather is actually some of the glue, isn't it? Some of the glue that's used to bond the leather to the interior substrates. It does have a little bit of an aroma that mixes in with the leather. So in a funny kind of way, the new car smell is a blend of both those smells, isn't it? Really,
absolutely. You have,
like if you buy an ordinary car with a sort of modern day, shopping car type car with a plastic interior, again, that new car smell is all the new plastics and glues and things that are inside a car when they're brand new. So ours is obviously a different smell. And probably one that most people would prefer to bottle it and put it back in again at some point. But
no, absolutely.
And the other thing I was going to ask you, James, was that on the pattern, so on leather itself, talk about the grain of the leather. Is that natural, or is that rolled onto the leather, or are some cheaper leathers kind of embossed with a grain to disguise what's really there? Or
so yeah, you're right. So more economy-driven leathers tend to have what we call a grain enhancement, or an embossed roller, which gives the leather a texture. True natural grain leather is actually very smooth. It does have degrees of variability as you go out towards the extremities of the hide, towards the bellies. It will become more pebbled and more grained. But yeah, generally, the more economy-driven leathers will have an emboss to them. But Aston Martins predominantly use very smooth grains, so the Lux Mill product, or the Caithness and the Balmorals, as they used to be called. They're currently going through a little bit of a refresh in terms of the naming. But yeah, they were all natural grain, very premium, no emboss on them whatsoever. So
right. And Jan has just asked a couple of questions, which I'll pop in because they're sort of relevant to what we're talking about. But so in terms of the colour of the leather, and also how many hides per car, do you sort of build a batch of leather per car, and then is that all kind of done together so that it matches? How does that kind of work?
So historically we've had around about 32 colours on the palette for Aston Martin. That can stretch up to 170 if you want to go onto the Q palettes. And basically every year we monitor the take rates for those colours, and we manufacture them in the batches accordingly. So after a year's production, we'll say, okay, well, 40% of the volume was black, so we know that we can manufacture the blacks in batches of, say, 200 hides, whereas the take rate for, say, Californian poppy or lime, or AMR lime or something was very slow, or very small, sorry. So we'll manufacture that in a lot lower batches. So the batch size manufacturing can range from as small as we can go, which is 8 hides at a time, which would be a bespoke colour, a one-off or one of the Q colours, to up to 200 hides at a time. And obviously, because of the economies of scale, different prices will apply depending on the batch sizes as well.
Yeah. And so on a car then, if we say look at a DB11 or a DB9 as a similar size car, how many hides would you expect us to order for one of those?
But 8 to 9 hides would comfortably do that. Again, it depends. Sometimes there's duotone cars as well, so you'll have maybe like two lots of, or if it's two bespoke colours within the same vehicle, you might need to launch 2 small batches of 8 hides, which means take you up to maybe 16. So I would say on average across Aston Martin there are about 9 hides per car.
Right. Okay. I seem to remember the Rapide, if it had a leather headlining, was about 12.
Yes.
Remember.
Correct.
So obviously, the bigger the car, the more leather. But also on the opposite sort of size of the range, the Vantage, which obviously got less seats in it to start with, 2 seats. How many highs would that be? Is that sort of 6 or 7, or?
Yeah, probably about 6 or 7. Yes, as I say, we use an average of about 9. So yeah, 6 probably being the lowest for the 2-seaters, and as you've just mentioned there, for the larger cars, and now the DBX can be anything up to maybe 12, 13 heights, just depending on what the customer expect.
Yeah, and I know another question that's probably going to come up is, from our point of view, is how long it takes for us to then turn the leather into an interior. And I think from memory, it's been a while since I've done a factory tour now. It's probably a good 2 years or so, but I think off the top of my head, I think we used to quote about 80 hours to trim an interior of a car. And again, it could be more for a repeat. And weirdly, the Signet was one of the longest to trim because it had hand sewn, literally with a needle and thread. Things like grab handles were hand sewn on those. So they were quite time consuming as well, actually.
Absolutely. Well, it takes us 6 weeks from start to finish, from the raw hide coming into the factory, from the abattoir all the way through to cut part for you guys. So
right,
6 weeks in total.
Yeah, it's quite a time, isn't it, when you work it out?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And in terms of cars you've worked on, you mentioned some of the cars earlier. So you would have done in more recent times some of the really unusual cars like the Victor, and some of all the Q car, everything really, I suppose. But in terms of ones that stick out in your mind, is there any particular project that has kind of been a tricky one?
Yes, I wouldn't say tricky, but what my favourite project to work on was the 177. What the target was for this vehicle was that they wanted what was called golden hides, which means that they wanted hides with no natural characteristics on them whatsoever. And as you can imagine, unless you're wrapping the cattle in the fields in the UK in bubble wrap, that's a very difficult thing to do. So so what they wanted was the golden hides, and basically out of every 200 hides that we processed from the start, only maybe 1 or 2 would be suitable. So to get 8 hides to do 1 car, you would need to load 8 lots of 200 hide drums to sort through to get those kind of golden hides, as it were. But that's not to say that the other material went to waste. Not at all. We obviously very much utilised everything into other products and other OEMs, other car manufacturers. So yeah, it was exciting.
And just reading the questions that come up. We're going to come back to the thing about how to keep the leather clean in a little while, but just thinking about leather itself and the fact it comes from a cow, obviously, very obvious. It doesn't come in a square, does it? It comes in a kind of dead cow shape, doesn't it? Sort of, we're all familiar with the symbol for leather. So when you supply a hide to us, what would you expect for us to? I mean, do you supply the hide already cut, or do we?
Yes, so we do supply the hide already cut now. Before that, we used a sort of tier 1, they're called, or a supply chain partner that would cut the leather and manufacture the seats. However, yes, you're right. On average, a hide is about 4.6 square meters in size, so very large. We only use male cattle. The reason being is that they're bred, they're growing up quite quickly, and they don't get any older than the age of 3, so therefore it minimises the amount of natural characteristics, and the males tend to have a tighter construction when it comes to the corium major or the fibre structure of the hide, and therefore you get less issues with bagging and sagging over the years. But yeah, a hide generally about 4.6 square meters, and we historically sent that down to a supply chain partner. They then cut it. However, we're now doing the cutting, so we can take control over that, and that allows us to maximise the utilisation and reduce as much waste as possible.
Fantastic. And a question just come up for me and Ian Kendall, which is a really good question, because before off air we were talking earlier about when you first started supplying Aston, and you said that you recently discovered in your archives that we did buy leather from you back in the 70s. And funny enough, Ian's got a V8 from 1973, and that's got Bridge of Weir leather in it. So there you go. We've worked out what model it was. So I think that's what you said, isn't it? The V8 earlier. So there you go, Ian. It is Bridge of Weir leather in your car. And I know for a fact that over the years, in my time with Aston, I've seen Bridge of Weir being used in service as well for restorations or repairs. So I think we've obviously been using you as a supplier for many, many years, one way or the other. And also, funny enough, you mentioned DeLorean. So some of our engineers went to work for DeLorean in the 70s. So when Aston closed in 74, some of the engineers went off to Northern Ireland and got involved with DeLorean, and then came back again, I hasten to add. So maybe eventually, maybe some of the memory of Bridge of Weir filtered through that as well. So we were talking about cleaning a minute ago. Somebody had a very good question about what you should do to maintain leather. I think virtually everybody on the call today, if they have an Aston, will probably have a leather interior. So what do you recommend, James, to keep your leather tip top?
Okay, well, it's a good question. Probably one of the most frequent questions we get. As we've taken over as sole supplier for Aston Martin since 2002, all our hides are manufactured to an incredible high standard. I do see out in the market very expensive bottles of soapy water that people can buy that are claimed as leather cleaner. But all I would recommend is a household soap detergent, like a fairy liquid, 1 part fairy liquid to 10 parts water. Use a microfiber cloth, make sure it's not really wet, damp. You don't want to soak the seats, but just a mildly moist microfiber cloth in circular motions. Just use that every so often to clean. Unfortunately, there are certain things that leather will not be able to repel, things like ink from pens and all that sort of good stuff. But the leather's manufactured to such a high standard these days that it doesn't need fed as older leathers did, because they were vegetable tanned. They used to dry out. You had to then apply waxes and all that sort of stuff. That the leather industry has moved on since those days. So you just need to be careful. If you do spill something on it, make sure you clean it off as soon as possible. But as I say, just household very light detergent with 10 parts water, and yeah, you're good to go.
And no need to feed the more modern car?
Absolutely not. No, don't need to do that.
I think anyone listening that's got a light interior, in particular, if you think sandstorm or ivory or that sort of colour, then definitely make it a part of the routine that if you're using the car, when you clean it, just get a nice damp microfiber cloth and just wipe the areas where you put your hands and things, because they're the bits that tend to get dirty first, aren't they, really?
Absolutely. The bolsters, the bolsters when you're going in and out of seats, especially when you're looking at sports seats like Aston Martin have, that tends to be the areas of biggest risk. But yeah, it's a strange one. It's something as well that we're getting more and more pressure on to improve upon, is the anti-soiling capabilities of our leathers, as lighter colours tend to trend now with the modern cars. And it's a strange one for us because also fashions are changing as well, where people that used to drive Aston Martins probably wore suits for the majority of the time, but these days with YouTubers or the younger generations coming through wearing more jeans and chinos, and the dye within these products are just not as strong, and they bleed out, and therefore our leather needs to withstand that.
Yeah, so you get like a transfer off your jeans or whatever. Yeah, that's interesting. And funny enough, that there's the flip side to what we're talking about, is where if you've got an older car, and I know there's somebody on the call, this will definitely ring true with. If you've got an old car which you're trying to preserve rather than restore it fully, do you do sort of leather that's aged that can be used then to kind of blend in with what's already there? Is that something you guys do?
Absolutely, we've seen a huge resurgence in this, Steve, over the recent years. From I hope you don't mind me mentioning other OEMs, but from the Jaguar Land Rover Classics range to the Aston Martin doing their classic ranges as well, to Bentley kind of bringing back out the Bentley blower, all these sort of good stuff. And we've been working on these projects, and what you want to do is you want to produce a modern, long-lasting leather, but it has that nod to the way leathers were back in the day. And we very much can do that. We can produce the distressed duotone effect that really matches the leathers back then. They all tended to have quite a high gloss as well. But yeah, absolutely no problem at all. As I say, we can pretty much pretty much match every interior, every bit of leather. We've had the most obscure requests come in, not only from classic bits of interior that they want us to match, but people have sent us aubergines to match because they want the same colour as the sort of dark purpley black on the aubergine. We've been sent handbags, we've been sent socks, we've been sent you name it.
I had a leather skirt given to me once. A lady came in with a mini skirt.
Yeah.
And she said, that's it, that's going to be the interior colour.
Okay, yeah, no problem. Absolutely. Just send it up. Yeah,
she hadn't worn it for a long time because it was definitely a bit smaller. It was one that I never forget, that one. It was like a pale greeny colour. They would have been you guys that would have matched it as well. So
there you go. Yeah, absolutely.
Another question that's popped up is what breed of cattle do you tend to source from, or is it a mixture, or?
It's the main beef breed. So obviously we're not selective. We take what we're given from the meat industry. Are there different cattle that produce slightly tighter leathers? Yes, but however, we can't control. We couldn't just take an Aberdeen Angus batch and run that through at 200 hides. It's just not the way it works. It's not the way that we receive the hides from the abattoir. They all come in mixed, and therefore we process them mixed. But yeah, Herefords, Charlemagne, and I would say the Aberdeen Angus are probably the main three that we use. So yeah, but yeah, just the main beef breeds. So yeah, it was good. As I say, locally sourced, supporting the British beef industry, and as I say, working closely with the farmers to ensure that the animal welfare, the veterinary standards, and the fact that they get the finest grass in the world to eat and the best water in the world to drink really pays off in terms of the quality of the hide, and therefore that's what makes our leather stand up and out from the rest of the crowd.
Right. Well, I do my bit to help you by eating lots of Angus beef. So if it's on the menu, I'll order it every time. So do my little bit.
Cheers. Thank you.
Someone's just asked as well, what about pigskin or other breeds of animal? Is that something you leave to other people?
No, we don't personally process that. Our factory and our tanneries are all set up to process the larger hides. So as you can imagine, a bovine hide or a cattle hide, or a bull or ox hide is around about, as I was mentioning, about 4.6 square meters in size. And therefore our hides, our processing drums, everything's set up to accommodate that. Anything smaller, unfortunately, would just get chewed up or kind of sent down the drain. I would dread to think we've been asked in the past if we could supply calf leather and all that sort of thing. But again, even from a sort of ethical point of view, for you to sort of advertise that although it's 9 hides on average for a full ox to go into a car, you would probably need maybe close to 20 hides, and I don't know, something just doesn't quite sit right with us on that side. So no, we'll stick to the cattle, the bovine for the time.
Yeah, it's fair enough, isn't it, really? Yeah, okay. And the other question that popped up a few minutes ago was about tours, and I know I guess we'll talk about Aston Martin tours in a minute, but in terms of tours of Bridge of Weir, that is something you could potentially do, but if people were interested, they should maybe contact Christine at the club.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if they could all be organised through Christine, we would happily support tours. That's not a problem. Ideally, a larger group at a time would be great, rather than just sort of individuals turning up every other day, so we can put a bit of planning into it and make sure we've got the appropriate machines running and all that sort of thing, because sometimes part of the factory might be down for maintenance or something. So yeah, if we could get a lot of visibility and say a group of say 10 to 15 people, we can plan it a bit better, and maybe you can get together some leather souvenirs and all that sort of good stuff for them. Yeah,
that's nice, isn't it? Well, from an Aston point of view, I know people often ask about Aston Martin tours. At the minute, we're not doing them because of COVID. This is still ongoing. And the factories, they've had to alter the VIP area from what it used to be. So they will return at some point, I'm sure, but not sure when. And I think it'll be quite a big revamp when they do that, and also a new team of people to do it. So, but yeah, anyway, let's move on from that subject. Just having a look through to see what other questions we've got coming up, really. Who is Bridge of Weir's main leather competitor, and what are the benefits of Bridge of Weir over that competitor?
Okay.
Is that one you want to?
Yeah, good question. So as it stands just now, I would say that our biggest competitor is a company called Pesubio in Italy. they're fantastic in terms of the products they produce. I'm a big believer that having a good competitor is always a good thing in business because it keeps you on your toes. But they're definitely similar in terms of size, similar in terms of the markets that they're trying to penetrate. So yeah, for us, I would say it's Vesubio in Italy is our biggest competitor.
Yeah, right. Well, thanks very much for answering that one for us. Another question, I'm just reading through the ones that have been sent through. This is a good one about barbed wire. There's an old wives' tale which we probably used to tell at the factory on the factory tours. Is that all still part of it? The fact that the animals are kept away from things that harm their skin?
We try to work with the farmers as much as possible to reduce the exposure to the cattle to barbed wire. However, due to financial reasons, it's very difficult to ensure that all farmers within the UK take their barbed wire fencing down. Yeah, there is still a lot of barbed wire there, but for me, again, as a leather purist, as a leather maker, for me, that's what those natural characteristics, those natural features, is what allows you to tell that you've got a genuine leather article in your car. For me, I would have my seat inundated with natural characteristics, just because I believe it's the same as having a beautiful rare wood, having the knots in the wood. It's the same with seeing growth lines or a small scar within the seat, within reason, of course. Obviously, you don't want it everywhere, but yeah, I think a wee nod to the fact that it is a natural product, and it was in a field at one point, and yeah, it might have accidentally had a wee itch. I don't think it's any bad thing, but yeah, there are still barbed wire fencing today, and we do see a bit of scarring. Yes, correct.
Yeah. Okay, brilliant stuff. Another question that I think you and I were talking about this earlier, and we kind of predicted that it might crop up today because it's a really good point. There's more and more people now turning to being vegetarian or actually vegan is probably a faster growing segment. So if that carries on, how do you sort of see the future being affected by that? And do you see it as being a problem or?
It's a very good point, and yeah, we're seeing obviously a growing trend in veganism and people wanting vegan interiors, and we wholeheartedly support the fact that there should be a choice. That leather's not going to be for everyone, whether that be religious or dietary reasons. That's absolutely fine for us. However, as long as they're making an educated, informed choice. What frustrates us from a leather manufacturer's point of view is that you get these sweeping statements by people saying, by not choosing leather for this interior of their car, you're saving the life of 5 or 9 cattle. Well, it's just not true. By people choosing a leather alternative for their car interiors, it does not stop people from consuming meat. The leather manufacturer is if anything, is doing a service by taking the raw hides that would go direct to landfill from the abattoir. We're taking that, upcycling it, turning it into something beautiful and putting it into car. If you think about it, the leather manufacturing industry in a way is one of the oldest industries in the world. If you think back to even when cavemen used to hunt to eat and then they would use the skin for clothes. Again, always recycling, and that's all that we have at the core of our business, is the fact that we're a recycling business. We're taking what would go to waste and adding value to it. With other products that are on the market at the moment, I mean, yeah, you do get some stuff that's maybe like 30% wool, but the rest of the 70% is always going to be a fossil fuel based plastic. The only way that you can get alternative materials to perform as well as leather, and to date there's been no man-made material that can match it in terms of durability, cleanability, breathability, is to inundate that material with PU, with plastic. And so is plastic genuinely a more sustainable future for interiors rather than leather that's biodegradable? I don't think so. So as long as there's going to be people consuming meat throughout the world, there's always going to be a place for leather manufacturers like us. And as long as it's done ethically, sustainably, where there's no, where the cattle or the animals are not mistreated, then I do believe there is a strong future for leather, but it has to be monitored closely. There has to be more audits. There has to be the tanneries putting pressure, and even the car manufacturers putting pressure on the tanneries to make sure that the farmers are adhering to the correct standards. So sorry if that was a bit of a long-winded answer.
No, I mean, it's a very deep subject, isn't it, really? And I suppose, in a way, the motor industry itself is, facing all sorts of, people are thinking differently now about the environment and obviously the future for inline petrol engines, you know, and electric cars and all that stuff. It's all a big, huge topic at the moment. And I'm sure, you know, I'm sure things will continue to develop, won't they, really? I think our industry as a whole, if you put pressure on it and say, you've got to do this by this point, then they will focus on coming up with technology and solutions for it. So, and I guess we'll all move with the times, won't we, really?
But yeah, even on that point, Steve, is that we even have the capability to take back our product after the end of life. And I don't know how we would manage to do this or coordinate it, but we could take back our seats from a car that was, say, going to the scrapyard, and we can put it back into our thermal energy plant to turn it into energy. And we could do it. And so it's very rare that you have a manufacturer of a product that can take complete responsibility from for its conception all the way to the end of life, but we have the ability to do so.
Yeah. Well, I must admit, recycling Aston Martins is a fairly, I don't think we've ever had a phone call from anyone to ask us to get rid of their car for them. But I know that all jokes apart, all modern cars, and this has been going since the 90s, every car maker has to have a kind of end of life policy, which basically says we will dispose of the car. You can dump it on our doorstep and we will get rid of it for you and recycle the plastics and oils and chemicals and things. And we did have to write one of those years ago, but to my knowledge, no one's ever come knocking for it. And our sort of survival rate is a fairly healthy, you know, we say 95%, which, you know, it's difficult to prove one way or the other. But if you think that's over 5,000 Aston Martins that are missing, even 95% sounds more than believable, really, you know. I'm just looking through, the questions are sort of starting to dry up a little bit. Where are we now? Oh, sorry, just reading through to see what we've got. I think there was a question a second ago from somebody with a DB7, wanted to know if we can find out if it's Bridge of Weir leather or not. I'm not sure if we can actually on that one. If whoever it is wants to get in touch with me, or if you haven't got my email address, pass it through to Christine and she can forward it on and we can see if we can find out, but we'll need a chassis number for that one. But probably not, because although you guys would have known at the time what batch of material it was from, I don't think we would have recorded that in the build history. But can you remember, James, when roughly that was in 2002? What month it was? I
was sadly still in school when that happened. So
thanks for that. I was walking around the bloody factory. That's made me feel old.
So I'll need to find out. I didn't start working in the family business till 2006, but I will ask the question and we can tie in together to see if we can answer down.
We might be able to have a rough stab at that, I guess. But yeah, absolutely. Okay. And there was a question a minute ago about wear and tear on dashboard surfaces. I mean, you know, I suppose that's not a very fair question for you to have to answer, but car design, you know, nothing ever, if you think about it, all cars wear out at some point, and that's what keeps car restorers going. The alternative to not putting a leather dashboard in would be a plastic one. And I think there'd be an uproar if we started putting big molded plastic dashboards in cars. So unfortunately, leather does wear and it does crack, and you know, it's just one of those things that just has to be replaced every now and again, really. I think that's probably the fairest way to answer that. Going back to DB 4, 5 and 6 era, the upper surfaces of the interior, the top of the dashboard, was actually trimmed in plastic. Nowadays, virtually everybody trims it in black leather, but it was actually like a plastic material back in the day. But again, people don't like that. They want leather. So it's just how it is, I'm afraid. What have we got here? One about perforation. How does perforation or quilting or embroidery weaken the leather? So when you perforate the leather, James, does it weaken the leather at all? Or?
This is correct. Yeah. So you definitely do have a different tensile strength to the leather after it's been perforated to what we call a plain leather. Yeah, the holes do weaken it slightly, and they also make it lighter. However, on these perforated panels, what they do is adhere a substrate to the back of it, a laminate material, to ensure that it has greater strength when it's been upholstered into the car. So don't have any worries or concerns over the tear strength of your perforated panels within your seat. It'll be absolutely fine.
Yeah. Someone's asking about how you dye the leather.
Okay, yeah, so this is about an 18-hour process. We use natural powder dyes, and yeah, we basically we get given a target from a customer, whether it be a pair of socks or whatever it may be, a bit of curtain or a bit of carpet from their house, and we kind of match and mix dyes to try and achieve that color. Yeah, it's a very long process, as I mentioned, from start to finish. It's 6 weeks for us to produce leather. It has to go through, on average, around about 56 different processes. And dyeing is one of the most crucial. Once we've
is it not submerged in the dye? Does it?
Yes. So big massive what we call tumble dryers, or big washing machine drums that can hold lots and lots of hides at times, so up to 200, as I say, but we have smaller vats or drums that can hold as low as 8. Water is key, obviously, and obviously we're very blessed being in Scotland, because I mean it's even raining just now. I mean, it rains every single day, constantly. So it's a good thing to have in terms of really soft water as well. So we've got some of the softest water in the world, and one of our little taglines is the same soft water that produces the finest whiskies in the world produces our finest leather. But it really does help with diluting the dyes, with helping the dyes penetrate the hide. Again, it's why we're so blessed to be where we're situated in the world. Is we have access to the finest raw materials and the finest water, and water is a huge amount of a contributing factor to producing the finest leather in the world.
And the old-fashioned leather, if we go back sort of 50, 60 years ago, when you turned it inside out or upside down, say if it was red leather, that the underneath would be like a tanny kind of color.
Absolutely.
So is that because the dye didn't go through the skin all the way?
You used to have great difficulty getting the dye to fix to the fibre structure of the hide, because it was vegetable tanned. Now with mineral tanning, it allows the dyes to bond better to the fibre structures, so you actually get a dye through leather, which is everything that we produce. So it also helps with wear. So if you have a scratch in the A surface of the pigment of the hide, and you went through to that sort of different colour, that lighter tan colour, you would see the wear. However, if you have a dye that's as close to the finished colour as possible, it then helps with the durability. Say 30, 40 years down the line, it's not as of a glaringly obvious issue as the car ages. Yeah,
because you see old cars where the leather splits and you can see the base colour coming through, but you don't get that on the later ones, do you really?
No.
There's a question come up about if you want a new car in an old leather colour, can you do a run of 8 to 9 hides? The answer is yes. We can order any colour leather. If it's an old colour, we haven't done it for 20 years, then it would effectively be done by Q, wouldn't it? So if somebody wanted Pacific blue leather, then we'd match it through the Q process, I guess.
Absolutely. If you even want us to dig out the recipe for the Concorde or the House of Parliament or the QE2, you can have anything within the interior of your car. No problem.
It's possible, isn't it? Yeah. Which, funny enough, is another upside of if we were using vinyl, then you couldn't do that. You couldn't go off and make a little roll of vinyl to trim a dashboard in a different color. You'd need to buy a massive, great big quantity of it.
Yeah.
It's another reason why we've always used leather, because when you're making one-offs, effectively, everything, it can just be covered in leather, and then that way it doesn't matter what color it is. It just makes it easier from a production point of view, really. So, and then of course the upside is that you've got more leather in the car and it smells nice and looks lovely.
Well, that's the joy, Steve, of working with Aston Martin. If you're dealing with any other car manufacturer out there, I would say probably 24, 26 is the most you'd ever be allowed to choose from. Whereas through the Q division and Aston Martin's sort of passion to make sure the customer can have whatever they want, as I say, they have 170 colours on their palette, approved, manufactured to spec, and the customer can choose from. However, and then we have, even out with that, with the 170 colours, as I say, you can send up your handbag, your socks, your whatever it may be.
Keep adding to it, sort of thing. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, again, I just to float goes with obviously the other side of colour choices is paint. And to give everybody an idea, we've got literally thousands of colours going back over the years, and On average, we do probably 250 to 300 different colours every year. So there may only be 30 or 40 colours in the whole range to choose from, but add in all the specials and all the old colours, it's on average sort of 250, 300 colours a year between the two factories. So it gives you an idea of complexity of how we build the cars and how we allow people to order them, really. And we don't stop anyone from ordering anything, in our opinion, that we don't like. It's, if someone wants it, we'll build it, won't we, really? It's, unless it's going to be offensive, we'll do anything, really, won't we? So or if it's going to flake off and not work properly, but even then we'll find a way around it. So I think we're kind of getting through most of the questions now. I'm just going to quickly scan through. Christine, I don't know if you've spotted anything that I've missed at all, but I know there's one about the future. You know, are there any kind of new things on the horizon in terms of finishes? And I know I've seen metallic leather becoming more of a thing in the last few years. Are there any other things that you know of, or?
Yeah, there's a few things that we have up our sleeve that I can probably let slip today. But yeah, we're constantly looking at different ways that we can change leathers, and whether it be just the colour, appearance, gloss, metallic finishes, all that sort of good stuff. But one we're kind of looking at just now is embedded technology, so kind of buttonless technology. So say if you were to have a full leather wrapped door, instead of having buttons for the switches, you would say just have an icon on top of the leather, and you would just run your finger over it, and it would pull down the window. So yeah, that sort of level of technology. So embedded technology within the surface coatings of the leather is something that we're investing in.
Cool, isn't it? Yeah, very cool. And I noticed someone just commented about quail grey.
Yep.
Yes, if you want to order a car in quail grey, we can do that, definitely. I remember the colour. I know the colour you mean. Someone's also asked about what, and with maybe a question for us, really, but you know, what do you stitch the leather with? Does it matter what you stitch it with? So the leathers that we get from you, are they? And I know we get the best threads as well to sew things with. Is that something that we have to stick to a certain type of cotton for sewing, or
very good question, Steve? And I'm going to apologise and say, when it comes to threads and stuff, that's not my speciality. No. I don't know the answer to that.
Well, I know that we've always sourced that out. Forgive me for saying cotton. I don't know whether that's exactly what it is, but let's call it cotton for the sake of argument. And we've always bought it from the same place for years and years and years. And we buy massive quantities of it and rolls in every colour. So if you do find yourself at some point in the future on a factory tour in the trim shop area, you'll see in the distance, you know, big cabinets full of different cottons, and they're also different sizes, the thicker ones and thin ones, used for different finishes. So you know, you can specify larger coarse stitching, we call it, or the sort of thinner stuff, which blends in more. But hopefully all of this is giving everybody a bit of an idea today of how complex an Aston Martin interior is, and how it's just as important as the outside of the car, and how the two things work together. And I think over the years, I've noticed that we've got better at finding leather colours that match or complement the paint colours better. So some of the things like dark colours like blue and dark greens are better nowadays for being able to match up to the paint than they used to be. So I think it's definitely getting more complicated, really, James, isn't it? The whole everything that we do between us, we just make it more and more complex and create more choices.
That's why we love it, though. That's why we love.
Yeah, exactly.
It's pushing the boundaries in terms of what we can offer the customer, and really setting Aston Martin apart from their competitors as well. And yeah, it's great. It's a great challenge, and it's a great honour to be the supplier for Aston Martin, and we hope that we'll be the supplier for many generations to come as well. And as the industry progresses, and as Aston Martin progresses, we're very much willing to do what we can to support and give the customers the greatest option to bespoke their customer, and also bespoke their car as much as possible.
Yeah, here to that. So, well, 20 years, isn't it? I think what we've talked about today. So here's to another 20 at least for both of us to be involved with it.
Fingers
Maybe
crossed.
not me, actually. Maybe I'll be gone in 20 years' time. But
Oh,
I'm sure I won't disappear from the Aston Martin world. But no, thanks ever so much, James. I think we've covered most of the questions. I'm just going to quickly double check there's nothing crept in that I've missed. Someone just saying that they've enjoyed it. Thanks very much for saying that. And yeah, it's been good fun and great to see you on here again, James. And I do hope we resume our road trip around the world at some point.
You too, and it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed.
No
Back over to you now, Christine, if that's all right.
yeah, sure. So thanks everybody for joining us. Brilliant session this morning. Don't forget that the meeting's been recorded, so that will be uploaded to the AMOC YouTube channel. You'll be able to see that in a couple of days. I'd be delighted to set up some factory tours for Bridge of Weir Leather. It won't be this week, I'm pretty busy this week, but have a look on the website, and next time we send out a social update, I'll send through some dates. I'll work with James on that. We'll send through some dates if anybody wants to do a group tour. And just thanks again to James. That was brilliant, insightful, fascinating. And thanks to Steve for hosting. Really good chat to both of you.
Thanks very much. Yeah, I think
Thanks,
I've
everybody.
certainly enjoyed it, and I hope you all have as well. So yeah, thank you ever so much.